Hi, Rod here. So this is the first of a series of short informational clips we're aiming to bring you with each of these newsletters. Now, alongside keeping you informed of developments and offers and so forth, we really want these newsletters to be a way to support your growth as coaches. So each time we'll be offering some tips or suggestions, some tools and practices and so on. Now, basically anything we think might help make you an even more effective coach than we know you already are. So today I want to cover the territory of presence, unsurprisingly, but how we might most effectively bring this into our client sessions. Now, naturally, this is a huge topic, and we're going to make an assumption that as you're already either a graduate or in our training, that we don't have to define what we mean by presence or demonstrate how to cultivate it, though I am going to do a clip on this later on. What I want to do here is to clarify how this can be brought skillfully, meaning presencing can be brought skillfully into your coaching sessions, as there's often a little confusion about how we might manage to do that without becoming too directive. It's a little bit of a balance. So firstly, it's useful to recall that presence is a trainable capacity. And we've taught you many ways to do so, and we hope you have been engaging in regular practices, which helps develop or has developed your ability for a more sustained experience of presence. So why this is important to this clip is, firstly, presencing isn't something we demand of our clients. Yep, it certainly can be helpful if they want to learn how to presence themselves. So it's certainly a useful resource for them, and we are definitely well advised to introduce them to it. So my way of doing so, of bringing presencing into the conversation, is in my initial conversation. So when I'm doing the alliance building with a client right at the very beginning. And I'm also outlining in that conversation what coaching is, what it isn't, what might be a great way of learning and so forth. So this isn't a coaching session per se, and it's a perfect time to be offering a little practice in that space in order to outline, or give them a first-hand experience of what it is, and perhaps then outline what the value might be for them, and they can experience that. So from there on in, it's up to them whether they want to choose to pick it up or not. So I will also always begin my coaching sessions, or the actual formal coaching, with, do you need anything to center or become more present for some coaching, or to enter the container of coaching? And from there, I leave it up to them. So while we're aware that our clients taking that time and presencing is immensely valuable, the real responsibility as coaches lies with us to inhabit and model presence for our clients. How we're able to do so is totally dependent on our own practices. So number one is to ensure that you are committed to your own practices of presence as coach. Secondly, ensure you take what time you need to center and presence before coaching. I really can't stress this enough, that while it's great if the client wants to presence at the beginning of a session, all too often I've experienced clients who just maybe want to take a couple of breaths, and yet once they've done so, it's still all too obvious that they ain't that present and centered. So in that circumstance, it's not my place to tell them that, "Hey, you don't look very present." Instead, we model presence. We create that container, and we literally entrain the client into presence via our own state. If you aren't presenced, then none of this is possible. So one other little tip I find, which is not always possible for everybody, is that one can be in a location or an environment which supports presence. Now, I have the good fortune to live in nature, or at least in the middle of a lot of nature, and I do offer the possibility of wild coaching as a way of supporting presence-centered conversation. Now, that's not always possible and not everyone wants to pick it up. In fact, the reality is not very many people do. But something shifts when we step into the wild. And this alone can be a presencing practice for oneself. This is also one of the reasons why we run our retreat in wild nature. Something else comes online. So there's your tips. Firstly, number one, offer a piece on presence and presencing in your intake and alliance building conversation. And that then opens the door for you to ask at the beginning of each session whether they need anything to center or to presence for the coaching coming up. They may well then even ask you to lead something. Some of my clients do. And if that's the case, go for it. If they do, but only if they request it, right? So don't just shove them along the path with that or insist upon it. Number two, make sure that you have presence coached. Monitor this state, reset if necessary. The quality of presence in the session is bound up in your capacity for presence. Build your practices for sustained embodied presence. If you're in training still, then watch this at the beginning of your classes as well. I can often see when we're opening up in classes that there's a lot of movement and distraction. Are you busy rushing about? Or are you giving yourself time at that point to presence? The same prior to coaching, of course. If you are not centered and present, then the client will be the same. Your level of presence allows for the entrainment of the client. So there we go, a couple of little tips, and we'll have more coming along in this whole series of conversations. Wishing you well with your coaching, and catch you next time. Bye.